am Dr. Lisa College. Welcome to Culture by Neurodesign. I'm really excited today to introduce my first ever podcast with a guest. And I'm even more excited that my guest is the wondrous Richard Etienne. Richard and I have known each other for a few years. We worked together. And now we don't formally work together in the same company anymore, but our paths still cross. And I think in this discussion, it'll become very, very clear why they still cross. Richard, over to you. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners, please?
Lisa, I love that intro, first of all.
Thanks.
It's just great to be here, and I feel honored to be guest number one. So yes, I am Richard Etienne. I am the founder of the Introvert Space. I almost said my own company wrong. See that the nerves kicking in?
Yeah.
My journey started in a very different world. I worked as an official videographer for the then Prime Minister Theresa May. And that was experience observing leaders and teams in like really high pressure situations that really sparked my interest in like how different personalities types can contribute to success, because Theresa May herself told me she's an introvert. Okay. And for me, my kind of eureka moment was when about being an introvert came a bit actually earlier in my career, because it was after reading a book from Susan Cain called Quiet. And from that, I was able to understand my own strengths and energy patterns. And it just completely changed the way I work. So now through the Introvert Space, I'm hoping to reintroduce introverts to themselves and help them to unleash their superpower. And then also for those who may not consider themselves introverts to feel part of this wonderful ecosystem and work as allies to introverts so that everyone can thrive.
Yeah. Oh, great introduction. Thanks for that. Okay, so Theresa May's an introvert. You're an introvert, you just said. I'm also an introvert. And I know there are lots of us out there, whether we know it or not. Like, to start with, can you share like what is an introvert? What makes somebody an introvert? Like how would I recognize I'm talking to an introvert if I would?
Yeah, what I'll do is actually start by saying what it's not. Introversion is not about shyness or being antisocial. It's fundamentally about energy. And in my talks, I often say it's how one gains or drains energy. So how one gains or drains energy. Introverts tend to prefer to recharge by spending time either alone or with a best friend or in small groups, while extroverts seem to gain energy from social interaction is a big one. So if you remember during lockdown, I would definitely say lockdown season 1, when we couldn't like go anywhere, and like it really became apparent on social media who were introverts and who were extroverts, because the extroverts like, oh my god, can't deal with this, and introverts were like, OMG, this is heaven. So it's definitely more about energy rather than social interaction.
Right. That's a great example. I know I'm married to an extrovert. He hated lockdown. He absolutely hated it. He still talks about it as if it was one of the worst things that ever happened to him. And maybe it was. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic to be able to work at home all the time. And yeah, great. So yeah, great example. So before this discussion, you shared some research with me that you'd done, obviously drawing on all your experience with videoing and working with leaders in those high pressure situations that you mentioned. But your research is about how graduate introverts experience starting out in the workplace. I think it's some really interesting research, like how you conducted it, but also what you found. So would you share some highlights of that research with our listeners, please?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. And the reason why I did this research was after reading an article, I can't remember what newspaper actually, but it was talking about how this particular graduates entering into the workplace, it wasn't about introverts in particular, but they were talking about how certain skills just weren't very apparent. So, how to speak on the phone. Gen Z folks, a lot of them are texters. They don't really do phone calls. But then introverts as well, we don't tend to I don't know, if I saw an unknown number phoning me, I'm like, do I really want to answer this? But yes, there were just certain things like networking, certain interactions in the workplace that just seemed quite foreign, because prior to that, again, we were at home. This is what we knew, and this is what graduates knew. But my research, it revealed some significant challenges. So many felt overwhelmed by constant social demands of the traditional workplace, let's call it. You know, back in the day when we used to be asked to go out for a drink every Friday or something like that.
Those were the days, yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
And this was actually, I did 3 things. So first of all, during an initiative that the Introvert Space hosts every October called Black Introvert Week, which is part of Black History Month, I interviewed members of the Black Communications or Black Comms Network, BCN, and they are primarily young comms and PR professionals.
Mhm.
And I think I had about 6 or 7 of them join me in a very short documentary that premiered on the Black Introvert Week Thursday. And then I had a survey also called Quiet Strengths, which was the name of the documentary, and they found that 78% of the Black introverts found the tradition from from hybrid work, or even just remote work, to hybrid work, particularly challenging. Outside of Black Introvert Week and just talking to just young people primarily, it was very clear that the environments that they struggled in most was to be heard in meetings. Again, it's like when you're so used to being at home and you can press the hands up button or type into the chat or actually have a conversation while the meeting is going on. In person, this is very different. And so it became very apparent that those environments were the ones where it were dominated by louder voices, and they felt pressured to network in ways that felt inauthentic to them. And in that, as a result, it became very difficult to self-promote, which you and I know is so important if you want to get ahead. And our listeners, in the workplace.
Yeah. No, I mean, for people who've listened to my podcast before, it should be really clear from what you just said, like why our paths continue to cross. Because what you've just talked about with struggling to behave as people expect you to behave, whether you're very, very passionate and outspoken in a meeting, more extroverted behavior, or very quiet and considered, and just really listening in a meeting, and how people experience that's difficult. That's something that often comes up with neurodivergence as well, which is, of course, the approach that I take to personality. But there's a lot of common ground in what we talk about. So just in case anybody was still wondering, like, why do they still talk to each other? That's why. You mentioned that title, Quiet Strengths, right? And when I was looking at your research, I looked at the questionnaire that was one of the inputs that you'd ask people to give to your research. And that questionnaire is also called Quiet Strength, which I thought was just a fantastic title. I wanted to ask you, what are the quiet strengths that get associated with introverts? We've talked about the challenges, especially a lot of social challenges and visibility challenges. But are there strengths that tend to go with introversion as well? True.
So I love the fact that we are now talking about the positive side, the quiet strengths, and the ones that came up, especially to mind, are deep thinking and analysis. So that ability to focus intently, process information thoroughly, and come up with well-considered solutions, which in the field that you and I worked together in, that is so key, with analytics and data. Then you have strategic planning. So introverts often excel at the long-term game and anticipating potential problems, but not just the pitfalls, but the contingency plans to actually bypass them, circumvent, etc. And with that is then the creative side of problem solving. So there is something about having that quiet time for reflection that just allows for more innovative ideas to emerge. And it's not all about talking, right? good conversation is also about listening, and so there is that empathetic side, empathy and listening that introverts tend to excel in. So that's so crucial, as you know, for building strong relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of those skills that you've just talked about, that they're so desirable, and people who don't have them naturally spend years and years trying to develop them. But they're also skills that we associate often with good leadership. Do you see that introverts can be good leaders, or is that something which is not a possible path for their future?
So before I even get to that point, I just definitely, because in case any one of our listeners start to make certain comments, I'm not saying that extroverts don't have these skills. Right? No. They are often the signature strengths of introverts.
Thanks for clarifying.
I do, often get prodded about that, and some organizations fail to recognize and utilize those strengths, and they tend to be missing. And this is why individuals like you and I are out there to become that added voice for those in need of that. So can introverts be leaders? Yeah, completely. The idea is that leaders have to be this media perceived version of almost like outdated type. It reminded me of like shows like Mad Men, and I don't know, they're just that loud was it gecko kind of shouting on mobile phones and stuff, that's not it. Introverted leaders tend to lead with quiet strength, as we touched on, empathy, focus on empowering their teams, and the things that they tend to be excellent at in terms of leadership, and I've experienced it with introverted leaders myself, is first of all leading by example. They demonstrate this kind of thoughtful, or the value of thoughtful work and considered communication. There are, and then it's not about, how can I put this? So look at someone like Oprah Winfrey, who recently said, "Yeah, I'm an introvert and I'm proud to be one." If you were to watch some of her shows back in the day, and the way she's like really bombastic and loud, and in one scene, you get a car, what was that line that she used to scream? But then she can sit with, what's her name, Meghan and Harry, and actually talk on a deep level and from a place of empathy, and that is where I really love to see our introverts thrive. They are not stepping out of their comfort zone. They are expanding their comfort zone to demonstrate the type of behaviors that are expected of leaders. So, public speaking and messaging and the rest of it. But then great at coaching, those deep one-to-one discussions, and providing positive, constructive and positive advice for those who wish to just move on to the next step in their careers.
Yeah, I would never have thought Oprah introvert, and this is something that I think about different styles of going out into the world because of where my passion lies. I suppose that just reinforces that it's it is not easy to spot what type people are, because they're choosing how they tend to go out into the world. I suppose what's really important then is that somebody is aware of their own type and their own preferences, and then they play to their strengths. Does that sound right? That self-awareness, do you think that's the key?
It is self-awareness. It's not about labeling. I'm someone who, how can I put this? I appreciate that there are groups of individuals who have a label, but that's so that we can understand how best to, for example, communicate with them in order to connect with them better, not to create this siloed, disparate spread of just individuals who appear more different than relevant or common. So yeah, it's definitely more about self-awareness over labels in that respect.
Yeah. Now the labels is a tricky one. I know we're going slightly out of the order that we discussed, but it seemed relevant with what you were bringing up. I'm quite happy to use the label autistic about my son, just because it cuts a lot of corners and it helps people to accept. And if his behaviour seems a bit different than typical, it's like, oh, he's autistic. You know, it's a very quick shortcut. If he was in the workplace, like I'm not sure, and if he was able to make that call for himself, which is not at the moment, I'm not sure. But certainly times and places for labels. But yeah, as you say, not all about the labels. All right, let's sorry, did I?
No, totally fine. If that's where we're heading, I'm pleased to go there.
Let's go back to all of the strengths associated with introverts, and thanks for that correction. It's not like introvert equals considered thinking. It's, but you know, if you make your workplace accessible to introverts, you're more likely to secure these skills. And if you make your workplace more enabling for introverts, you're more likely to let those skills that are there come up. So thanks for clarifying that. But our workplaces are not a load of introverts with labels on them saying, "I'm an introvert, do this to work well with me." There's obviously friction between introverts and extroverts. Like, do you have some examples of the frictions that that people can find in working with each other? Maybe from both sides, from an introvert working with extrovert and extroverts working with introverts.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, I have personal experience, and frustrations can often arise from misunderstandings about work styles, communication styles. Sometimes extroverts may perceive introverts to be a bit aloof or disengaged. I've been called laid back so many times, but not from a positive perspective, right? Or in the workplace anyway. And it's simply because, there is just a lack of understanding. And introverts, on the other hand, might feel like overwhelmed with constant interruptions, maybe, or being pressured to participate in large group discussions ahead of the time that they're ready to contribute. I don't know if I touched on this earlier, but introverts tend to be more considered, need a bit more time to kind of process the information that's being shared, so that they can come up with a response that it doesn't come from a place of pressure or influence. And if one is quiet in the meeting, it doesn't mean they're disengaged. Just invite them, be aware as a chair, for example, to say, oh, Richard, I noticed, Richard, would you like to contribute anything, or not even contribute? Like, say the topic is about, I'm just looking around my room, television, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, Richard, you recently did work on, remote controls this week. Do you have anything you'd like to add on that part of the discussion? Or prior to the meeting, because meetings aren't always at the beginning and the end, as a chair, you can, when you send the agenda around, with that, message your team members to say, look, if there's anything you'd like to, any points you'd like to raise on any particular points, please let me know ahead of time. I'm happy to give you the space to discuss. So there is that kind of just this lack of understanding that can cause friction. But then I suppose extroverts as well may find the introverted silence a bit challenging, and may even question like the value or the effort that introvert is putting into a task. So it's for us as introverts to, if we are aware, again, self-awareness, if we know our behavior, personality type, it's for us to then let said leader or colleague, peer know, hey, sometimes I'm a bit quiet in these situations. Trust me, that doesn't mean I'm not listening. This is what's going on. And, let me know if there's anything that I could do to help you to better communicate. I don't know what can't think of the right line at the moment, but it is about, again, it's just being upfront if you are aware of who you are, be more upfront with that so that people are comfortable to express their feelings in a way that is respectful.
Yeah. I mean, just while you've been talking, you've made me think about something which happened to me after an interview that I had. It was an interview to move into the product organization, and I heard that the gentleman who interviewed me said afterwards, like, she's got all of the skills and everything, but I'm just not sensing any passion from her. He said this to somebody else who told me later. I'm just not sensing any passion from her. And there's this was 15, 20 years ago. So somebody else just said, oh, for God's sake, she's British. She's stiff upper lip, low passion whatsoever. But now what you're talking about is making me think maybe that is to do with my introversion as well. I don't naturally show energy that would be recognized by, but I'm pretty sure that he's an introvert, the guy who interviewed me. And luckily he did ask somebody who could clarify that she's a stiff upper lipped Brit, or maybe now would say she's introvert and she's got a different style. But so luckily that could be set straight by somebody who knew me better and probably knew what was behind what he thought was missing.
Exactly.
Right, but it's just my style. I'm not somebody. Well, I find it easier now, but this is 15, 20 years on. I'm a bit more confident with who I am. But at that time, I wasn't very confident. Doing an interview, right, for a job that I really wanted, wasn't really confident. Just going, hey, yeah, I'm passionate. Here is the he wanted to see the holy fire. He called it. Here's the holy fire burning in me. Here it is. Look, I'm desperate for it. So yeah. Anyway, silly anecdote.
And then I'm sure many of our listeners today will have similar stories and examples. My God,
there's quite a lot of examples. The more that I learn talking to people or reading stuff or whatever, when I look back and I kind of revisit comments that people have made to me, and I think maybe what they said and literally what I heard wasn't exactly the whole story. There's more behind it, and then just while you're talking, I'm thinking about this example. It's like, okay, there's probably much more behind it than what's said. Anyway, I'll take from that what we want. You gave some good tips, right, about how people can better manage meetings and share ideas with each other with respect for each other's different styles. I think that's good food for thought for people thinking about their teams and how they run a particular team or a particular meeting. Are there things that like an organization as a whole could choose to invest in as well to promote this kind of respectful curiosity? Hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth. That is my
no, I appreciate that. And like team building exercises or activities are definitely one that I've enjoyed in the past. And in my previous role, I remember on an away day, we had a personality expert kind of come in and talk about different styles, and we do activities where he'd ask us all a particular question, and we go to a particular corner of the room based on the answer, and then you realize, oh wow, it's just me and this one other person. There's like 20 people over there, but that means you and I are more connected than we thought. And prior to that, I definitely would have said that you and I are quite different. But that's a fun way it was a fun way, definitely for me and others that I was with at the time, to understand how alike we are to people we thought we were different to. So that's one creative or energetic way. Another way is having some clear communication guidelines or toolkits, those type of things, because what that does is it creates a understanding or a culture of understanding and respect, because it's there in black and white and it can be easily shared, commented on, brought up in team meetings, events, so forth, and people can refer back to it. It's exercises are great and wonderful when you have the memories, but with those we don't tend to understand why. and the impact or effect that an action or non-action can have on a person based on their personality style. So yeah, I think great activities, but then, and also having some clear guidelines in place as well.
Yeah, I love that. Making it really explicit, like how you want to behave in a team, in a way that's really captured. That you said that as well, right? That's important that you capture it, so you can refer back to it. It's great because it makes people very conscious about it and think about it, and and say what I like, what I don't like, find a middle way. I think it's a really good tip. I love that approach. But I know, I also know it takes effort to do that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we all know everybody's extremely busy. Everybody's always got too many things to do, and always looking for any way to create time for themselves to do other things. So obviously, if somebody is spending the time to invest with their team in these practical exercises and maybe translating it into some kind of written or visualized team norms, that's time they're not spending doing something else. So if you had to sell to somebody why they should invest in doing this, what would you say? Like, sell it to them. Go on. No pressure.
Let's sell it to them. No pressure.
No pressure. Introverts. Discussion partner. Go ahead.
So let's take a step back in terms of like the diversity, inclusion, or DI, or whatever the label is at the moment, conversation. If that had a strap line, I would say it's "I see you," and there is possibly nothing more sweeter than being seen. Was it Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People? There was a line about this one's name. There's no sweeter sound to a person than the sound of their name. There is something about being noticed and understood that is so refreshing, rewarding, and encouraging. And most people stay in their roles not just because of the salary. In fact, more than that is often the people. So imagine that you can create an inclusive culture where retention is high, the mood, ethos, all of these wonderful things are high. And why would you not want to do that? So everyone has a personality. Everyone does. That's a fact. And so this is where it's one of those elements of the DEI conversation that can help improve your bottom line if you're looking at the business case, but then also the mood and morale of your people.
Yeah.
Well,
I almost don't want to ask a question, because I think for you as well as for me, it's such a no-brainer, quite honestly, like why you would invest in doing this. The benefits are so obvious, but unfortunately so many teams and so many organizations don't, that I do want to call it out and make it really explicit. So thanks for that. Have you worked in that kind of environment when it's very inclusive and everybody is seen for who they are, and you really have the sense that somebody is saying, "I see you"? Have you worked in those environments?
I have, and they usually. So I'm on the board of a couple of charities, and those are charities that mean a lot to me. So the first one, Sarcoidosis UK. My father passed away from sarcoidosis 20 years ago, and it's an autoimmune disease that still doesn't have a cure. So we're working relentlessly to get that. And then the other is the Hackney Empire Theatre that was just so influential in my young life and got me my first job. So those two spaces, it seems like the spaces where they are there for a very, very valuable purpose is where that "I see you" element is strong. And because they understand the importance of collaboration, we need to be more together than apart. So maybe thinking, that was a great question, by the way. So, but those
it's a surprise question. You're welcome. I wonder if that's because people are there through choice. Nobody has to be there. Nobody's being paid to be there in those volunteer organizations that we're talking about. So it is different from your job, right? People are there by choice, and if they want to achieve this common goal, then they have to just respect each other and work out how to work together.
Lisa, I have to ask you that question. Come on now. I think that's a great question. Unless you don't want to, but like,
have I ever worked in that kind of yeah. I mean, I've worked in one department like that, and it was very clearly a goal of the leader to create a trusting and open and respectful workplace. The goal was actually to transform a very toxic, horrible place to be into a productive working environment, and it worked, and it was amazing. And it wasn't only amazing when we got there. The journey was amazing, because the journey was ask people what they think and allow people to share openly. And yes, people can vent, but then we're going to move on and do something productive with it. And it was just it was a motivating and wonderful place to be. And I mean, when I started in that work, I was really hurting from being bullied by a previous manager. I was really in a mess. And I have to say that working in that way was one of the major things that really helped me to kind of get back to something like myself again. So I think that the benefits went far beyond what I did in the workplace and what I contributed in the workplace, but also into my personal life and what my family was experiencing from me and my friends. So that was, I mean, I've been lucky to have that in one department. But I mean, here and there you get it with odd colleagues, right? Like you really just look forward to some meetings or some calls with particular people, because you know that you gel so well and you always learn from each other, and you always come up with things that you couldn't possibly have come up with on your own, like either one of you, but together you come up with this amazing approach. I think that I had it when I worked with you. You were one of them.
Thank you.
And there are not that many people, unfortunately. But I think it's just because that's example when it happens naturally. It wasn't until more recently that I learned, okay, you don't get this for nothing. This is something that you can learn, something that you can learn to appreciate from people, to be aware of, and to work on. And since I've done that, it happens more often as soon as you get aware of it. But before I knew that this is something that you could actually have some influence over, it was just occasional, and I kind of grabbed it with both hands whenever it happened, because it was so wonderful. So fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that journey. Yeah.
Oh,
Love that.
Many journeys when you get to my age. Wonderful. I think this is a good place to end on. I'll invite you at the end, like if there's any closing comments you want to make, like please make them. But also, if people listening are thinking, I think I'm introverted and I want to learn more, or somebody in my team or whatever it is introverted, I want to learn more, like what can they do to learn more and to take some action that will make their workplaces better? What can they do?
Yeah, certainly. So yeah, first of all, thank you everyone for listening. And if any of this resonates with you, and as Lisa said, you're questioning whether you are introverted or not, I would definitely encourage you to visit the introvertspace.com. I am launching a YouTube channel which will have lots of very short, informative videos as well. But if you go to the introvertspace.com, there are free downloads of ebooks that should help. You've got the Introvert Survival Guide, self-promotion for introverts. It's all freely available. So yeah, have fun. Get in touch with me if you have any questions, and Lisa as well, because I think we are both here to help.
Absolutely. No, and I've seen some of those resources that you're talking about. They're beautifully put together. Really nice. Very very easy to digest. Really practical. Highly recommend them. I'll put the information that Richard you're still going to send me in the episode notes, so it's easy for anybody to find. But I think otherwise I'll say, Richard, thank you so much for being my first ever guest on my podcast.
It's been a pleasure, Lisa.
Oh yeah, as always, it's been lovely to talk to you. I'm always glad to have the excuse to talk to you. You know that. Thanks for sharing your expertise.
Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.